I think this might be one of the best ideas I've ever seen. Rep. Jim Banks plans to strip rioters of federal unemployment benefits. Why are they getting unemployment benefits in the first place if they're rioting? It should be a no-brainer that they should lose them, but hey, he's figured it out, and this is it. The government right now is subsidizing people who are going out and burning things down. The only reason they're able to do it, they're not looking for jobs because they're suckling from the good old tea to Uncle Sam. Well, it's time to cut it off. You want to go out and burn stuff down? You get caught, you lose your money. Makes enough sense to me, right? Breitbart reports. Rep. Jim Banks, Republican, Indiana, is introducing legislation this week, Breitbart News has learned, to strip convicted rioters of federal unemployment benefits and have them pay the cost of federal policing of riots. I love it. Simple but effective financial solution, if you ask me. Banks' legislation, known as the Support Peaceful Protest Act, would ensure that rioters convicted of violence, vandalism, or looting must pay restitution to cover the cost of federal law enforcement policing of the riot at which they are arrested. In addition, Banks' plan would mandate that convicted rioters become ineligible for federal unemployment benefits during the Chinese coronavirus crisis. Some are currently receiving hundreds of dollars in extra unemployment benefits. Quote, Antifa thugs are descending on suffering communities, disrupting peaceful protests and leaving violence, looting, and vandalism in their wake, Banks said in a statement. They turned Milwaukee, Seattle, and Portland into war zones, and now they're moving the chaos to Kenosha, Wisconsin. Who knows which community is next? Due to enhanced federal benefits, taxpayers are giving wages to jobless rioters that are destroying our communities. We need to cut them off from their funding and make them feel the full financial consequences of their actions. Banks' legislation comes as rioting has continued in Portland, Oregon, and since broken out in Kenosha County, Wisconsin. In Kenosha, local law enforcement asked for 750 United States National Guard to help restore law and order, but Governor Tony Evers only sent about 250. Well, I think it's fair to point out he has since accepted Trump's offer for assistance. Good. On Thursday evening, Black Lives Matter and Antifa protesters stood outside the White House and accosted attendees of Trump's speech for the Republican National Convention. Senator Rand Paul and State Rep. Vernon Jones were both harassed and surrounded by protesters. Rand Paul was actually attacked, mind you. And the only reason he wasn't hurt is because the police were standing in the way. Yes, this is obvious. Why are we subsidizing the extremism? Now, I want to show you something. This is interesting. From NJ.com. New Jersey teen who held Black Lives Matter protest gets hit with $2,500 bill for police overtime. On the surface, I do not like this at all. If I want to go out and peaceably assemble and you want to send police, that's your cost, not mine. But there is an interesting point to be made here. The police are paid for by the community. So if you are going to go out and peaceably assemble protest and there is a potential for riots and the entirety of the community has to pay for the police, does it make sense then for the community to say, you got to pay for the security? That's interesting. It's not a clear cut yes or no, in my opinion. I don't like the idea of telling people you can't exercise your First Amendment right unless you pay a bill. But doesn't the community have a right as well if violence breaks out or if it is breaking out to have security for their community? And why should they have to pay for it when you show up and the potential for violence erupts? Interesting question, though ultimately I think it's a violation of the First Amendment. We'll see how it plays out. NJ writes, when Emily Gill learned of the lack of affordable housing in Inglewood Cliffs and the fact she believes black residents are priced out of her Bergen County hometown, she felt an urgent need to enact change. The 18-year-old who graduated from Bergen County Technical School in June organized a small, peaceful Black Lives Matter protest last month. She says, Englewood Cliffs has dodged affordable housing requirements for 40 plus years. Gill told NJ Advanced Media, I find that unacceptable. I'll tell you my problem. I love peaceful protest. It's an American institution. This country was founded on rejecting, basically a violation of our rights and asserting our rights. Though the First Amendment does say peaceable. Should she have to pay because other people are violent? I say no. That's the heckler's veto, and I won't stand for it. However, a corrupt media and Democratic Party in this country has routinely called violent riots peaceful protests. And because of the ongoing violent riots, we got to send out the cops. So what do we do now? We're between a rock and a hard place. I believe we can just stand true to the Constitution and accept freedom, more important than security, And that means regular people, if you want to accept your constitutional rights and your freedom, it means people might show up. And you know what? I lean in that direction. And you know what else I will add to this? Give me the right to bear arms. That's also in the Constitution. So if you want to go out and engage in your First Amendment right to peaceably assemble, and there's a potential for violence, I have the right to defend myself. Now, the only problem is they're passing laws to restrict the Second Amendment. I was asked a really funny question by a friend not from America. They said, hey, Tim, and this is a true story, I kid you not, the Second Amendment says the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And I was like, yeah, but how come you can't go out and buy a gun? And me and my friend started laughing, not at the question, but at like the absurdity of people who are not American can see how broken that is. What's really funny is I didn't even hold these, like I wasn't a staunch 2A, guy up until the riots broke out and I realized how wrong I was. Boy, did I do a 180. I went out and bought a bunch of guns. So if you want to go out and you want to protest, you want to engage in these riots, first of all, yeah, we shouldn't be paying you at the very least. And we shouldn't need police because people should be allowed to bear arms and protect themselves like the McCloskeys did. I think it's hilarious that people condemn the McCloskeys when they were on their own property. Don't bring it to my house. Who do you think you are? Well, let's read more of the story. 4 days after the rally, Gill received a hefty bill for police overtime. Please promptly forward your payment to the borough in the amount of $2,499.26 for the police overtime caused by your protest. The letter provided to NJ Advanced Media states that since Gill had refused to meet with officials out of the protest, the borough was left scrambling to provide security. Your lack of notification left the borough with little time to prepare for your protest so that the police department and Department of Public Works could ensure that everyone would be safe. I'm sorry, I'm not buying it. Look, I am absolutely opposed to the extremism and the violence, and I'm sick and tired of peaceful protest being spouted while people burn things down. But I'm not going to sit back and have the government tell me I got to tell you when I want to peaceably assemble. It's interesting because I mentioned this years ago. I said I think there are some reasonable restrictions on guns that we could do that everyone will be happy with, and someone said to me, for sure, Tim, I agree. And I think there should be reasonable restrictions on the First Amendment, and we should restrict your right to say what you want. And I thought that was a really interesting point. There are restrictions on free speech, things that are crimes. But owning a gun isn't a crime. They make certain ownership a crime. The things you can't say are things that are overtly illegal, like threatening violence and telling people how to or encouraging them to commit crimes. That's not free speech. Owning a gun is legal, but they create legal restrictions to make it harder for you to do so. That is creating the crime. I'm looking at this now like maybe there just needs to be some kind of straight up free speech, constitutional, I don't know what you call it, but not necessarily absolutism. But there should be restrictions on what you can do with your speech and restrictions on what you can do with your gun, but not restrictions on what you what you hold. Like you don't own speech, but the general idea I'm trying to say is you can say whatever you want until you take a direct action. You can own whatever gun you want until you take a direct action. That is illegal. In the end, I guess the challenge here is a government that says, if you would like to speak, you must come to us for a permit is the same government that says, if you would like to own a gun, you come to us for a permit. And I see problems there. If she's going to be complaining about receiving this bill, I'm sorry, I find it a bit hypocritical. If you're going to go out and say that people who want to buy guns have to pay money, right? When I went out to get my gun permit, ID and all that stuff, I had to pay for it. If I have to spend time and energy paying for this, why shouldn't she? No, the reality is both are wrong. You should be able to peaceably assemble. You should have a right to bear arms. And I should have a right to defend myself. It's that simple. But for now, here's what we get. There's no penalty for passing laws that violate the Constitution. In fact, the penalty falls on the individual. Why is it up to me to go out and challenge being charged money for my protest so that they can rule it unconstitutional? Why do I have to spend time and energy to do that? They weren't allowed to do it in the first place. Why do I have to file a lawsuit to defend my Second Amendment rights, my Fourth, my Fifth, all of my rights? Why is the burden on me, the citizen, to challenge the government when they violate the Constitution? It's a challenge. I don't know the answer, but I'll tell you this. It's wrong for them to charge money on a First Amendment ground, and it's wrong of them to charge money on a Second Amendment ground. People have a right to bear arms. People have a right to peacefully assemble. Get the government out of there. I didn't used to feel that way for the most part, but at this point, what can I say? We've seen the ineffectiveness of government. We have seen the willingness of violent rioters to destroy, loot, and burn. And if I believe I have a right to protect myself, they have a right to speak up when they want. If they get violent, that's when they cross the line. Law enforcement can arrest them. If they get violent towards me, I have a right to defend myself. It really is that simple. I'll tell you this. I'll wrap it all up. The general idea is we can make arguments about what we have to do as citizens for our constitutional rights, but the last thing we should be doing is paying taxes to fund these people. Now that is wrong. Don't make me pay so these people can go out and riot. And I'm pretty lefty when it comes to like taxes and government policy and social programs, but I'm never going to fund a social program that allows people to burn and loot and kill people. Sorry. I'll leave it there. Next segment will be tomorrow at 10 a.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all next time.